Thanks for coming, everyone. I'm Golda. I'm the host today, and I'm just we were really thrilled to see how many people signed up to this because I guess this is a big question people want answered. I'll let everybody introduce themselves. Who would like to go first? Maybe Judy, as she has her mic on.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Judy Arnell. And I've been unschooling my 5 kids since I pulled the oldest 2 out of grade 2 and grade 1. And I think this topic is very, very good today because out of my 5 kids, 4 of them went into a career or a career path in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, mathematics. So obviously math is a big component of that. And today I want to share with you everything I know about math. And I've also, I wrote a book called Unschooling to University. So I also have a few parenting books I've written too. Here's my brain. Ta-da! So I have a 2-for-1 special. So if you want to e-transfer me $40, I can send you whatever 2 books you'd like. So that's kind of my intro.
Nice. And then we have Robin.
Hi, everyone. You can still hear me okay? Okay. So my name is Robin Robertson, and I'm an unschooling parent. I have 2 kids. My son is 14 and he'll be 15 in September. My daughter is 11 and she'll be 12 in, like a week and a half, I guess. So we've been home educating for over 8 years. We didn't start out as unschoolers. I had recently relayed in a discussion as well that I had never heard of unschooling when we first started. I didn't even think it was a thing. I didn't think it was possible. I didn't really know anything about it. And we slowly over time found ourselves doing that or finding our way into that. And we've just continued. We found what works for us, and we've just continued to do that as time has gone on. I'm also the creator and host of the podcast, Honey, I'm Homeschooling the Kids. And that really came about because as a home educating parent who had a ton of questions that I wanted answers to and that I needed to talk to others about, and I love to listen to podcasts. And at the time, there wasn't really very much out there in the media form that I liked. So it was my husband and another few friends who encouraged, said, well, why don't you just start one yourself? And took me a while, and that's how it began. And it just has really evolved into a great community. It's been a great learning for myself and a great chance to offer support to the community, which really is always needed, especially as I think it's growing. And not everybody is always as supportive. So I think we really need to get support from everyone else. And yeah, I also serve as a public school board trustee in my local area, and I'm honored to serve my community in that capacity. And I worked in actually education in different roles for many years, I think over 20 years or more, actually, whether it's private education, public education, all different forms. So obviously you see educate, I'm always drawn to learning and that side of it. So that's a very long extended version introduction of myself. Thanks, everyone. Golda, I'll hand it over to you.
And I'm Golda David. I'm an unschooling mother as well. I pulled my son out in the middle of grade 3. I was the principal of the school I pulled him out of, and the reason I pulled him out was complex, but part of it was because I realized that he wasn't that the kid that was going to be able to be successful in school. He just, he got a wiggle seat on the first day of kindergarten, and it just went downhill from there, I think, for his and he had started to hate learning. So I've been an educator actually since 2004. I graduated from Teachers College in London, Ontario. I was a principal for a couple of years, and then I became a homeschool coordinator and facilitator for a Northern Alberta school division. So that's what I do now. I do that. I'm also writing a book on how the school system works, because I think there's some things inside information that could help parents navigate that system while they're homeschooling their kids. So I moved from fairly traditional homeschooling into what we're doing now, which is unschooling. And so that's my little bit of my story. And I guess we can start. Did we have any questions that has come in before this? Did you, or would Judy actually has a presentation, doesn't she? You have a slideshow that you would want to show?
Mute button. I have a few slides, and I thought if I could present for about 10 minutes on the whole topic of math, and then that might stimulate people to ask questions. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds good to me.
So
please, I should start off by saying, if you have any questions, please put it in the chat, or you can raise your hand and ask to speak, and then we'll ask you to speak, and you can ask your question on camera if you want. Judy, is the chat visible in the recording?
No, I think you're gonna have to. Oh yeah, I'm the one who's reading the chat, right? Yeah, I think I can do that.
Okay, so Judy's gonna read out the question without your name in case that's an issue for you.
Yeah, that's probably a good idea. Okay, what we're going to do, where does my picture start? Oh boy. I didn't really put this in slides. I just put it in pictures. So if I share screen, well, can people see that? Yes, math books. Okay, so you probably heard over the new draft curriculum. Now, I recognize there are people from outside Alberta that are here today, so I'm going to very much talk generally, but I just want to talk about the differences between direct instruction and inquiry-based discovery learning, which we currently have in Alberta. So they overhauled the math curriculum in about 2006, 2007, and they went to a more inquiry-based method of learning math, which is, so these textbooks are used in our schools, and they don't really tell students, okay, 5 times 5 is 25. They don't tell them how to figure out, for example, adding fractions. What they do is they ask questions, they stimulate the student thinking about what the answer could be, and they don't just teach one way of adding fractions. They teach a few ways, quite a few ways, and it is expected in the curriculum that students know all 5 ways, because that's what they're going to be tested on. So that's what we call discovery learning or inquiry-based learning, but it's in the structure of a classroom. Students don't get a choice. They have to do it that way. Whereas, as you know, in unschooling, children decide what they're going to learn. They choose what they're going to learn, what they're interested in. And a lot of their learning, their absorption happens in the course of daily life. So they learn through lots of different methods, through their play, through their projects, through their problems that come up. Math is all about solving problems. It's a set of tools, formulas used to solve problems in real life. What's wrong is that too often it's too abstract in a classroom where children can't relate it to their lives or their personal problems within their community. So it's very isolated. They learn how to do math on paper too early, and then they develop sometimes a phobia about math. They feel they're not good at it. They develop inhibitions about math, and that's not good either. Direct instruction is how they used to teach math. So they would teach one good way to add fractions, and every child had to know it. And in many ways, that was a lot better in schools because it gave kids competency. It taught them one tool to do something. So how do unschoolers learn math? Obviously, every unschooler learns math. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you something. I'm going to just stop the recording for a minute. Okay, so to reiterate that, if kids don't learn formal direct instruction math, how do they learn it? So these are very good board games for learning math. They're card games, board games. These are computer and audio video games that teach math, not specifically math, but math skills. For example, the logical journey of the Zumbinis. I don't know if anyone remembers that, but that was a fabulous game of deduction and logic. It's really good. And then through toys, like a cash register that the kids play store with. Those are things that teach about math too. So that's how they learn. But as you can see, all children learn math, no matter what they play. If they're playing blocks or Lego or anything in their play, they are using math tools. So it's not like they start learning math at grade 8. They have that experiential learning of how math solves problems. And then at grade 8 is a foundational year where they start doing it on paper if they're going to go into a STEM career. But I took these images from the internet because I think it really, really shows you how kids can learn math in everyday life. So this shows them angle degrees. And it's just, you can buy these doormats actually and put them outside a door, which is really, really cool. If they are out in the garden or they're going to a post office, they learn perimeter and area and volume in everyday life. And every child learns to tell time, even if you don't teach it. They learn because they know it's a skill that will help them in their life, and they want to be like the adults in their life. So this is my son's sheet on day 1 of his high school math course. Now, look how bad this lettering is, right? It's spilling over from one line. Like it really looks like chicken scratch. And he was learning to set up his proportions and things like that, which is what he did in grade 10. And look at 3 months later, look at that improvement in his writing. Isn't that amazing, I think? And there is, this is his second math course, grade 11. This is day 200, but it's very, very nice, neat writing. Such an improvement. And I didn't teach him. I didn't tell him you're writing your numbers backwards. They pick it up. They know that their 6 doesn't look like other people's 6, and they pick it up and they learn. It's learning through discovery. So fractions are everywhere. Pizzas, cookies, sharing is all about fractions they learn. I thought this was really neat. This is more higher high school type of things to learn. Pattern blocks, geometry. We learned graphing through playing Battleship. What a fun way to learn. Multiplication bingo. These are letters that I was trying to, my son wanted to learn how to multiply one day. So I cut out big letters, and they're big, they're 2 feet high. And I got him to jump, like jump from the 2 to the 3, jump from the 2 to the 2, jump from the 2 to the 7. So he gets it physically. But, you know, after that, he never really needed that because he used a calculator. Music, you know, learning the times tables. Do you teach the times tables? We hear that so much in the news. All my kids learn the times tables, and I didn't teach it to them. They picked it up because they use it on a daily basis. When they start using it, then they start remembering it. But there's things like these are nets. This shows kids in 3 dimensions experientially what math problems are. They can see it, they can feel it, they can take it apart, they can understand it. So this is an example of a math problem in daily life. So this was a birthday cake we got for one of the kids' birthdays, and they sold it in half cakes or whole cakes. So we bought the half cake because it was less expensive, and we took it out of the box and we thought, this doesn't look like half a cake. It looks like somebody shaved a bit off here. So the kids said, yeah. And I said, well, how do we know? How do we prove this? And it was a great teachable moment of learning how to use pi to measure cake. And the kids were so excited, and I showed them how to figure it out on paper. And that is real life math. Kids in school need more examples of doing these things so that it relates to their life. It's relevant. It's what they need to understand math. Here's place value. I thought this was really cool. It's science. It's not math, but this was one teacher had this on his ceiling. More real life things. And more real life things. This is algebra right here, whether you use these tiles or you use Lego, right? It teaches kids real math. Here is x squared plus 4x plus 3, right there in real life. So children do learn, learn everything they need to know experientially. So why is grade 8 the perfect grade to switch to math on paper? So this is Alberta Programs of Study grade 8 math. They cover all of these things in grade 8. So if you're unschooling your children and you decide, okay, I'm not going to worry about math till grade 8, put them in at grade 8 and they learn everything. So they start with addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, and they go through all of these things. And you could skip grade 9 then, because grade 9 just adds circle geometry, and then go right to high school math. If they're going into a STEM career, then you decide what program in math in high school. Now, if they're not going into a STEM career, maybe they don't want to take high school math, and that's perfectly okay too. Not everybody needs high school math to be well-rounded and to live their life, or jobs as good citizens. Absolutely. So where does Discovery Math fit? I think it's very, very good in the schools up until grade 8, but I think after grade 8, Discovery Math does not work at high school. So for example, this textbook is for Math 20-1. It has, again, many different ways to solve a problem, and kids just get confused when they're doing a more sit down paper math. They get more confused. So I think, yes, Discovery Math is great up until high school, but in high school, they need way more direct instruction. And these are books that we used for high school math. So we used The Key. We just got into this one this year. And we go through the textbooks to know what the topics are. But there are so many resources out there that your child will find. I can't teach math beyond grade 8, but all 5 of my kids could go on by themselves. I wasn't holding them back because I didn't know math. So they all went on their own. Okay, and that's it. That's my little presentation. So I'm supposed to read the questions, right? Okay.
There was only one question. It was about you making your screen bigger.
Oh dear.
Whoops.
Whoops.
Well,
sorry.
What we can do next, I would kind of like to hear what Robin thinks too. And there was one question about regarding the game list. I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll put that up.
Okay.
Okay, Robin, go ahead.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to actually comment. I think this probably will get more into the larger discussion as well, as questions come. I actually had made a quick little note because I sat in on a STEAM discussion yesterday afternoon on Clubhouse. And I went in because it's an educator that we both follow each other, and we usually try and chat a little bit. She's an educator in the United States, and her focus is STEM, introducing STEM, especially to girls as well. And there was somebody in the room who I felt was, it was really interesting because she is a researcher, a guest lecturer. She lectures for Harvard Education, Yale, and many other, if you want to, Ivy League universities as well. And she had actually talked about, because the focus was STEM, it was science, math, technology in that discussion. And she had talked about, she found through her research, her big thing was emotionally engaging education. And I found she talks about 3 points, and we're going to connect at another time, but it also fits, and I'll explain why it fits into what Judy had explained as well. The big part, number one, she says, motivation is always the biggest key, the why. And I think that's what happens is we teach because we're told to teach it, or it's in the curriculum, but we lose the why, or our kids don't know the why, or they don't have a why other than we're doing this because my parents say I have to do this, because a teacher says I have to do this, because a school says I have to do this. The why is lost, so it becomes more about memorization and regurgitation. When the why is lost, you lose the application if you don't have that application present. The other part she talks about is the powerful, engagement, which powerful ways to engage, and also connects to the why, which then supports lifelong learning. And I think that's really the big purpose for all of us here, is really supporting lifelong learning for our kids. So whether that is math, whether that's science, whether that is writing, whatever, I believe all subjects actually support each other and blend into one as lifelong learning. The biggest part of engaging, she really reflected on is stories. It was a big part, and games. She said those are two huge skills or ways to support learning with our kids, is through stories and games. And obviously, I think many relate that to reading and writing, but we were talking about science and math and technology, and she says that is as valid and important as anything else as well. So she said really what that does, the stories and games, creates emotionally engaging experiences. So emotionally engaging experiences are what help solidify that foundation for learning, no matter what you're learning in math, science, reading and writing. So stories and games, especially if we have the fortune to be at home with our kids and engage in stories, creating our own stories or narratives around the world, what we're doing in our daily life, how we can maybe use it, or what it is. We're baking and we're telling stories about our family, and we're measuring ingredients and counting fractions and doubling the recipe. And if it calls for a quarter and we're going to double it, what does that mean? Oh, we're going to need a half cup now. Or volume, and it's calling for 30 mils. What does that look like, and how would that differ from something that's asking for grams? Getting out the scale and weighing something and comparing it and adding more, taking it away, all of that again, and then being together and going through all of that and creating maybe, whatever you're creating. I'm just using baking as an example, but there's many other examples in life that creates and sets the emotionally engaging experiences, which is such a key to learning. And then the other part wasn't exactly the ways or hows, but she actually she talks about, she actually says that actually the third big part of it is out of school learning. And this is a stat that she gives: 75% of an employee's education comes from informal venues. So 75%, that's a huge amount. She says it's not from their college degrees, it's not from their accreditation, it comes from informal venues. What we take and what we practice, what we live, and when we really need it, the why, the motivation, is what becomes so important in a parent. It's also really my mother-in-law is a math educator. She's a teacher. She has her master's in math education. She actually talks about all of those same things, and how through her research as well, they found that most who use math and different levels of math in their life, many times what they really become skilled and good at they have almost retaught it for themselves, or they're using it in a job where they need it at that moment. So that why becomes very paramount. They're very engaged because they need that in their learning or in their living, in their work. So, I think, what I'm also trying to say here as well is the importance is not always just the resources of how I'm going to teach this or how we're going to offer this to our kids. There is also part of that day-to-day, month-to-month idea of learning and engagement and learning and connection and learning. So that's my addition. I'll pass it on to Golda, unless anyone wants to ask a question or comment on it.
I think there was a question.
Golda, did you want to comment on Robin, or shall I go to the question?
Oh, yeah, I can comment. I actually, I just want to share some of my experience with math, actually, because when I went to school right to grade 12, and around grade 5, I actually got lost in math in the system. And by grade 8, I had gotten so far behind in the school system that they put me in a special math class where we were allowed to use calculators. So I would say I probably had maybe a grade 6 math education at the most. I didn't know how to multiply. I didn't know. So I graduated from high school. So I went through grade 8 to grade 10 in this special math class where we basically did very simple, probably grade 5 worksheets and struggled with them and didn't get a lot of help. And then in grade 11 and 12, I took accounting as my math. And that's the only reason I graduated, because I wasn't actually able to do high school math. I went to university when I was 27 years old, and I took non-math based science classes, and I was a history major. And I graduated from university with a grade 5 math education-ish. And then I decided for some reason that I wanted to be a physics teacher. So my math learning happened when I was in my late 20s. And I suddenly realized that I actually needed to learn that math because I needed to teach the physics class, and there was math in it. I'd stay up late to 2 o'clock in the morning trying to figure out what an exponent was and how to do square roots and all of that stuff that you guys learned when you were younger. I learned later, much later. So when I started researching unschooling and that unschooling movement, my own experience was that you could be very successful in life with without a formal math education, because even though I had a formal math education, I didn't actually really learn it. So I had to learn it later. And then when I was reading Peter Gray's article on math, he talked about how that math, like we think of it in our culture, it's almost like a cultural norm, but it's not entirely true that you have to be good at math to be intelligent. In fact, quite a lot of scientists are not good at math, and they just use the math in order to make things happen or try to figure things out, but they're not actually, math is not their strong suit. And that made me feel better, actually, as I kind of knew that already, but it was nice to hear a psychologist say it, somebody who had, and he said that math wasn't particularly magical. We think of it as magical, but it really isn't. And so I started to think about what math was for. And I was actually quite good at math because I was a waitress and had to count change in my head, for example. So that involved a lot of math skills. I said my whole life that I wasn't good at math, but I was able to use it in real life. And I actually think that might be more important. I know that we really put an emphasis on math in school. I think it's because we've come to equate it with intelligence and ability and skill and success, and it's not really true. So that's kind of my input to to the discussion is my own personal experience that you can be successful and even graduate from university with a grade 5 math education, and then learn it later when you actually need it. And I learned it fast, like within a few days, I learned how to do all of the math that I would have learned from grade 5 up until grade 12, because I had to suddenly. So, and there's nothing like you're going to be standing in front of a bunch of highly critical teenagers teaching them a physics concept and you don't know the math behind it to motivate you to learn the math instead of letting them judge you, because they're very good at that when you're in front of them. So I kind of wasn't entirely, it was easy to convince me that math was something that you could learn at any point in your life when you needed it, because I had already done that myself. And then my son recently decided he needed to learn. So he's very interested in scuba diving. In his quest to become a millionaire, he has decided that treasure hunting as a scuba diver is the way to go. And he has, every time he finds out that someone is a scuba diver, he has a long list of questions and he grills them, sometimes for a long period of time, including Robin. One of those scuba divers told him that he needed to learn math because you have to measure and be able to figure out like how fast to come up and the ratio of oxygen or whatever. They were talking about that. And now he's on a quest to learn the math that he needs to learn to scuba dive before he goes into a scuba diving class. So I just thought I'd share that too, because he was like, I don't need to know math. Now he's like, oh, I need to know math right now. So he is studying math right now because he's decided that he wants to be a millionaire and he needs to do the treasure hunting with the scuba diving. So, okay, were there any questions, Judy?
So a question is, where is this chart? And you can find the chart at unschoolingtouniversity.com. And the blog post is called How to Create a Learning Environment Without Using Textbooks. There's also another post on there on ways to learn math without a workbook, which is pretty interesting. I go through all those concepts like ordered pairs and ways that kids can learn that too. And I wanted to add something too, that my kids, and so my youngest is now doing high school math, and my older kids who have graduated university, and did the same courses. I said, can you help your brother out? Because he's stuck on this. And they're like, I don't remember any of this. And it just shows you that what is math for? The brain keeps things that it uses on a daily basis. We know that. And I just want to screen share this brain here picture. So that's the way the brain works. So here is what the part of the brain that children is most sensitive, most active when children enter kindergarten, grade 1. So it's this frontal lobe. It's the higher order cognitive skills, right? This is what's in use with math. It's not that kids don't learn math from 0 to 5, which is this part of the brain, but this is where they can understand it a lot more because it's tangible in their environment. Now, I'm saying to you, let them learn math through play and wait until the prefrontal cortex right here is more developed. When they get their abstract thinking skills, that's when they can understand the concept of a variable, that a letter stands in for an unknown number. They get that faster if you wait until this part of the brain is developed. And that's from age 13 onward, right? One of the questions was, so when kids learn things through daily life, did I point it out to them that this was a math problem and math skill? And the answer to that is no. I just let them absorb it, whatever they learn from the situation. For example, I said, can you help me mail these packages? Because I got to get them to the post office and we have to get the height, the weight, the length. And so I show them where to measure. And they spent a long time doing it because they were figuring out, they were absorbing the math lesson internally. I wasn't there teaching because I don't like teaching. So everything they learn through absorption and using it for their own purposes later. Robin, maybe you want to go next? Do you actively point things out to your kids when they learn them, or do you just trust that they're processing them more internally?
I don't. I'm trying to think of examples maybe when I have. Nothing's coming to mind at the moment. We definitely have a lot of conversations, though, that involve math. But like maybe I might say, oh, this is actually, this is graphing, or this is, this kind of reading relates to this. Like maybe they've done something in math that I can say, this is what they were talking about. I know for our personal example, we didn't do any formal math classes either, or curriculum, until when we first started homeschooling, we did. And I did the Math Makes Sense textbook because our teachers had sent it with us, and finished that off very quickly. Sometimes I talk about how, we were sent with all of the work to finish off the school year, and we did it all in 1 month. And I was kind of like, what the hell, like I didn't expect this at all. And so that was one of the textbooks. But then after that, our math was really just hands-on, being in the world. And then at grade I think it was about grade 4, my son came to me concerned because he felt like his cousin knew more math than he did. And he was really upset by that. And he didn't want her to know more. She went to school. And so he had this concern. And so I explained to him that, we have the great chance to have the time to learn whatever he needed or wanted to learn, and I can help him with any of that. And so we looked for something he was comfortable with, and that he felt satisfied this concern, and it happened to be Khan Academy. And so that year we did Khan Academy together. And I think, I'm not even sure if we finished grade 4 Khan Academy math, but we basically did it until he felt satisfied that he knew more than she did. And then he was like, okay, I'm good. I'm good. We can stop now. We can move on. And so that's what we did. He did end up continuing Khan Academy in, I think, probably grade 7 or grade 8. And so he has been using that. And then my daughter, I think more so because my son was doing it, started doing Khan Academy herself. And so there are times when, and the thing is it's when they do Khan Academy, they do it on their choosing and the time that they want to do it. And they always do it with me. So they'll say, maybe my daughter wakes up in the morning, and our routine usually is we read together. We do a read aloud. I usually read to her while she's on the couch, kind of waking up. And then after, she might say, let's do Khan now for a little bit, Mom. And so we'll sit together and do it, and we'll talk about it all through it. We'll do it together and have discussions all through it. And same with my son. He'll say, I want to do some Khan today. You want to sit with me and do some Khan Academy? And so we'll sit and do that together. So sometimes there might be something that comes up in that time where we see something in life and it relates. And I'll say, remember when we were doing Khan Academy and they were talking about this is the exact example, or this is what's happening when they're explaining this. So I think that's probably the time that happens. I do want to say that what I have also noticed, there's two things. A lot of the math I feel that I'm doing with my kids now, I've had so many aha moments, like, oh, this is what I was trying to learn in school all those years. Now I get it. Like, now I see how this relates. And it's actually as an adult that I've started to learn how it's the building blocks on top, how it does all relate, that math really is about a series of patterns, and how everything, whether it's graphing and stats and fractions and, everything, I'm trying to think of all the terms or all the units that they break it into, actually it's like a hub. Here's the main circle, and they all relate to the main thing. I get that now as an adult. I just couldn't understand that concept as a young person. And I noticed as well, when my kids are doing that, when they're doing Khan Academy, there's really some points that, like for my son, for example, he gets it a lot quicker than I do. And I also realize it's because it's a lot of things that relates to what he does in his life. So he's really big into like hunting and on all the outdoors part. So when it comes to like distance and those measurements and degrees and all of those sort of things that he has down just because he does them continuously, he gets those a lot quicker than I do. And that has really stood out. Same with my daughter as well. Those things that they do, they practice in life. Money, they've both done. My daughter usually has a business. Those things seem to come quite quickly when they're doing, because they have that connection. They have that real learning in that way. So.
You're such a great mom to sit there with them during Khan Academy. I'm like, I don't want to do this again. I scraped through in high school and never did any of it in university. I don't want to see it again, but you are so nice.
But you know what it is? It's also really interesting to me. And I think that's why I really enjoy it. And as an adult, I've come to learn to love math. When I thought, I used to think that math was only for math people and that I just had to sit through the drudgery of math in high school and school to get my diploma or to get on the honor roll or whatever, so that I can make sure I got a good mark. I never actually really got the beauty of it. Like, to me now, I'm like, math is really beautiful. I see the creativity in it. And again, I just didn't understand, like, there was no concept of that when I was younger. As an adult though, I do. And so when it comes to math, I actually really like doing it with my kids. It's really fun for me. So I'm like, yeah, I'll do it with you for sure.
There you go. There's a tutor for all of you. Golda, do you have any comments to add? Like, should we point things out to kids or just let them absorb whatever they're learning unless they ask?
Yeah, I do point things out sometimes, actually. It depends on what it is. Like, the thing is, I've started to see all the subjects as being co-related. I guess I did before too, because I was really, as a teacher, I was into different types of learning. I was most often a social studies or history teacher, sometimes English, sometimes they made me teach math. So I actually have math education now because I had to teach it. And but I started to see when I got into project-based learning, I saw that they're kind of all correlated, actually, all the subjects. We like to put them in little boxes, but they're actually all together. So if I find that if you are pointing things out like, oh, that's literacy, or oh, that's math, and you're downgrading that the reality that it's all related to each other, and there is no, you're putting it in a box instead of letting it be part of everything. And so I try.
I just want to say yes, that's it. I agree, Golda. Yes.
I try not to do that for my own self, because I tend to put things in boxes because I was an educator for a long time, and I'm trying really hard not to. So I like hold back from doing that sometimes, pointing it out, because I don't want him to do that later. I want him to see that it's all related and part of a whole. So that's kind of my answer. And what about, and Judy, you already answered. Is there any other questions on the chat box?
There is. Okay, so we have one person says, my son is learning about fractions and he's made relations from fractions to probability. Do you just follow his interests and talk about probability, or try to have him look more into advanced fraction applications before coming back to probability? He's turning 8 this July. I guess what I'm asking is that if I should chase his interest in probability or try to hold him back to master fractions first. We didn't really start the session with what's our definition of unschooling. So maybe we should do that. My definition of unschooling is the learner chooses. They choose what they want to learn, when, if they want to learn it, where, who, how. So in our family, I put things out. I strew, what we call strewing. So I'll take a big bucket of math pattern blocks and I'll put it out on the table and leave it there and walk away and go make dinner. And my kids walk by and they go, ooh, something new, or I haven't seen this for a month. And then they start building and making connections. So that's what strewing is. I always think that, yes, introduce your kids to things, strew things, invite them and say, hey, you want to look more at probability? Do you want to look more at fractions? And they'll say no, and you let it go, right? You don't have to make them go do anything. You follow their lead. That's kind of my philosophy. Is I put it out there. Now, when they did sign up for a grade 8 math course, I got their consent. I said, do you want to do this? They said, yes. So I still consider myself unschooling. And I also said, well, if you do this, these are the parameters you have to agree to. Like, you have to show up at this online class once a week. You got to do some assignments. They said, yeah, that was good. And then for grade 9, they didn't want to do it again. So that's why we skipped grade 9. And then I said again in grade 10, do you want a diploma? Because you need 10 credits in math. Or do you want to go on into engineering? If you do, you're going to have to take 4 high school courses in math. Do you want to do that? So that's what unschooling is it's letting them decide what they want to do, learn, and how. So I hope that answered the question. Golda, let's start with you. What do you think? Would you?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I started off with him in school, and then I was more a traditional homeschooler at first, where I actually followed the Alberta program of studies and used ADLC math materials. One of the things that I was concerned with is building up a math resistance and a lack of confidence like I had, because I think if a child is forced to do something like that and they don't want to, then it was like, actually that happened with reading for him. He had decided he was never going to learn to read. First of all, he didn't understand why he needed to read, and so he had developed a resistance to it. And I didn't want to do that with math. So I would say if like right now, the math that he's talking about learning for scuba diving is like, if you follow the school program, you learn adding and subtracting and multiplication and division, then fractions and decimals, and then you go into all of that. Well, he doesn't know multiplication and division very much yet. So, and he's going to learn fractions and ratios, like, but I think he's going to learn that multiplication because he has to, because that's how I learned how to do physics problems with a grade 6 math education. I just learned how to do the things I needed to do, and it's possible to do it that way. So I agree with Judy. My idea, I have gone deeper and deeper into unschooling in the last 2 years because I see other kids as a facilitator, and a facilitator in Alberta means that I go to and help people write home education plans and meet the requirements of the Alberta government home education regulation. And so I help write plans. So I see kids starting off in unschooling sometimes, and I see their excitement building, that they can learn what they want and that they have complete control and responsibility over their own education. And I have seen a miraculous changes in kids going from depressed, hating learning, suspicious of me because I work for a school division, to loving learning, being engaged and fully there and excited about learning. So at the end of the year, I get to see them again, and we write a final report for the government, and the kids are excited to show me things that they've done and stuff. And I have seen miraculous changes in kids with unschooling. And so I'm a more of a believer that now, when I first heard about unschooling, I thought it was like a hippie movement. I'm from BC. British Columbia is like on the West Coast, and so I knew what that was, hippie movements, I really didn't. I thought it was just silly, and as I learn more and more, I see that it's probably the best way to educate all of us, including myself, is following your passion and interest, and not having to do it in a certain order. So I agree with Judy on that. What about you, Robin?
Yeah, I think I agree as well. I think you can look at it as, if we're answering specifically that question about fractions and probability, if it's something that he's interested in and he wants to relate fraction to probability, absolutely, you can talk about it. You can bring out, again, that's a great chance to offer some hands-on things, maybe bring out some things that he can play with or do and show examples, kind of, or he can create examples on that and how he understands how it relates. And actually through that, there's a lot of advanced math that actually naturally just comes into play. Like I think of things like even building Lego, how much math, and Judy had referred to it a little bit before, but we think of just putting the blocks together, but there is counting, multiplication, division, fractions, there is area, there is algebra. There is a lot that is actually in just the building of Lego that relates to all division, that carries on to many other areas. So if he wants to explore that, absolutely, you can do that. And I think you'll know pretty quickly if he doesn't. If he's like, no, this is good, or no, I don't want to do this anymore, then you'll know where he wants to go. If you are pushing it and he's really fighting you, maybe that's where he wants to go with his fractions and probability. Maybe that's good. And then at another time, he'll come back again, or he'll want to explore more of that. But just be open to your reaction and his reaction, and you'll have an idea. But I think just in play, there's a lot of advanced mathematics that happens. We maybe just don't always understand, because it's not like a textbook where it's labeled and laid out. We may not realize that it's already happening, and it's already happened because it doesn't says, now we're going to be doing statistical probability, or right now we are going to be doing sine and cosine. It's already been playing out in that play in the natural world. So, and that's something I think probably over time you can understand those connections, but I bet you 90% of the time that advanced math has already been happening.
Okay, so our next question is, what is the minimum required for a child to gain a high school diploma, or if not doing diploma, be set up to potentially do post-secondary at a later stage in adulthood if you know they are not strong in math? So also,
is this in Alberta, Judy? Is it the question Alberta based?
It doesn't say actually. So I was going to ask that too. Whereas depends on where it is. It's different in every province and state or country. Okay, Alberta. Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk about Alberta. So in Alberta, if they want a diploma, they need 10 credits, which can be math, 10 credits. It could be actually, Golda, do you know this? Could they take, yeah, they can. They can take Math 15, which is a catch-up course, and Math 10C, and that counts for 8 credits right there.
Oh, right, yeah. I think they have to have credits in both 10 and 11 actually. So they'd have to do it. The lowest level to do it is 10-3 and 20-3 in order to get a high school diploma. And then you can, I don't think 15 would count towards that math credits, but I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, it's a good question. You'd still have to take another course in grade 11 anyway, because you'd still need 2 more math credits.
Yeah, because my son just did that. It was the only course offered for that program, so he had to take Math 15. So, which kind of answers your second question. In Alberta, that's a catch-up course. So if your child is 15 years old, hasn't done grade 8 math, hasn't done any math, they take Math 15 and it sets them up for high school math. So what's interesting is one of my kids finished high school diploma at age 19 and just did bare minimum, like grade 11 math, grade 11 science. And then he wanted to go into a bioscience career. So it was like, okay, now what? Now you need math and science. So it only took 1.5 years to get chemistry, grade 11, grade 12, biology, grade 12, and math. And this was pure math, not the applied math. So this was a -1 STEM math that he needed. And when you're an adult student, a lot of courses are combined to get them faster, because they recognize adults have jobs, they have other commitments, maybe they have kids and families. They don't need to spend 4 months on a course when they can do it in 2 and combine it with 11 and 12. So I wouldn't worry about keeping all the doors open now, because if your child changes their mind, wants to go into engineering, they can pick up everything they need in about 1.5 years. And it's only 1.5 years out of their life. So what do you think? Go to Robin.
Yeah, I think the one is, I mean, we went through this because my son was talking about, now that he's high school age, what he wants to do for high school. He wants to get a high school diploma, but he needs to spend as minimal amount of time doing that as possible because he's doing other things. He's just not able to be in a classroom, essentially. He just has a lot of his year is already being spent far away. So doing his work, his life experience in that way. And he was actually, because he likes math and science a lot, he was actually quite saddened to learn that the courses that you need to get the diploma was actually English and social studies, I think. And he was kind of like, well, why did they choose those? Like, why can't you just have a choice of why can't it be math and social studies and then the other ones you can get a lower level? And it was like, I don't know. But I know that was one of the things is it was social studies and English. I think you have to have a certain higher level in order for the high school diploma locally here. And then your other credits, which can also, if you're going kind of that traditional credits approach, you can get it in many other ways, whether that's CTS courses and there's many ways to do that. The great thing, I know if anybody's from the US, the US has a great thing called community college that we don't have here in Canada. And I know of a lot of unschoolers who say they've never done anything like math at all in their entire childhood growing up and until they went to community college, and they did all of their math in community college in that 1 year or courses in community college that they needed. And then from there, because in the US, you can get your associate's degree at community college, you can get many of your courses you need if you want to go on to another university that they grant you that. And from what I understand, a lot of community colleges are free. Or quite, the cost is not high. So, I mean, that makes it quite accessible, I think, for all when you have that opportunity. I think that's fantastic. And so I know many unschoolers that did that route, whether they waited until they're 18. I also know others that started going to community college at age 14, 13, 15, because they knew what they wanted to do and they found those courses at the community college that was that focus on their interests. So there are many possibilities is the thing. The other thing about getting into university, I would always just check with the admissions. Many times you actually don't need a high school diploma, you just need the requirements. And sometimes that's just the course requirements. They actually don't ask for the high school diploma. I know we checked this ourselves with some that my son was interested in at one time. And sure enough, they said, you know, that was what they required, those certain course requirements and a certain grade, which actually changes every year because they go on that scale. Like this year, we're putting it at this percentage. And then, you know, you never really know here in Canada how they're going to accept anyone each year. It actually fluctuates. But yeah, so I would suggest also looking at post-secondary if you're getting to that point. But it's not as strict as you actually think it is. In that way, it's not, you have to have this diploma in this and then you can get in. There's actually many different ways for admission.
Yeah,
Can
I
I
was going to
add
sorry.
something? Sorry.
It's okay.
Your child can take a high school math course too at university, right? In Canada, absolutely. They can, it costs more because it's the same, you know, $600 instead of free, but it's a doable. And yeah, so I'll just.
Yeah, and I was going to say about the second part of that question about potentially doing post-secondary if they're not strong in math is that the chance that they're going to, very few people decide to become physics teachers when they have a grade 6 math education, I think. So most of the time, if they're going to go to post-secondary, they're probably not going to enter a field where they need that math. But if they do, you can learn it later because I did. So I think that's the answer. And it depends on the university and the college. It depends on the program. It depends. The requirements are so different. It's really hard to answer that question. And also, I know in Ontario, for example, a high school diploma is absolutely not required by most of the universities there. And so it's just a matter of what they want to know, though. So you have to think of colleges and universities as businesses. And in that business model, they need to have success. So they're rated according to their success rating. So if kids fail, or if it's not kids anymore, if people fail at their courses in university, their rating goes down, and then people don't choose them anymore, and so that affects their money. So when they're deciding who gets to come into their programs, it's basically based on it's based on whether or not they think they're going to be successful. So if you can prove that you're going to be successful in another way, they'll allow you to come in. For example, when I was 27 and went to university, not only was a high school not required, but I was almost for sure going to get in because I was a single mother at the time, and single mothers almost never fail at their university courses. So it actually, they usually graduate with very high marks because they're very highly motivated and driven to be successful, and that's why they were there. So the idea that I wouldn't get into university, that was a non-issue because they accept almost everybody in my category, I guess. So just so you know, universities and colleges are businesses, and they are worried more about the success of their students than they are about you meeting certain checkbox and requirements.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, our question is now, just looking at time, we're definitely going to end at 2:30 because it's a nice day here. So we have about 20, oh gosh, this requires math, doesn't it? We have about 22 minutes left. So just if you have a question, get it in there. So one question is, I'm curious about how you react or phrases used with a child who's 10, 3 years, been unschooling, who says, I hate math, and just has a bad attitude when you bring it up. Should I never mention the word math? Haha. I would say, I don't know. I wouldn't know what I've never told my kids about math. I would just I don't know. What do you guys think? I don't know about that one.
I would just ask, I would ask, well, what about math do you hate? Or what does math mean to you? So maybe there's a misunderstanding there as well. Or maybe there was a bad experience that was for some reason called math. And so therefore they've always related math to something negative. So maybe there's another story there that just hasn't been told yet that you just might be able to find out, or within time as well. So I also know that, within our society and culture, a lot of times that's a common thing. I hear adults saying that all the time still. I hate math. I was so bad at math. I suck at math. Actually, a really great, so there's Joe Bowler is a fantastic educator. She's a math educator. She has many books, and she also has a website, ucubed.org, YOUCUBED. I'll type it in there too. She and her big research focus has been on the math phenomena of people are math people. Some people are good at math, some people are not, and it's just an innate ability. And she says that's actually all false in all of their research and data, that there's no such thing as a math person. We can all do math to high levels. It's really the environment that's created around you. Yeah, thanks, Golda. So and she actually on YouTube, she has many videos that she's done with her students. She's actually a professor at Stanford University. So her life is dedicated to all of that research. She talks a lot about that and her vision of making math equitable, because she says really that's what happened is math has been an unequitable subject for many areas, whether that is, class, economics, race, you name it. This biggest thing is especially the high number of males that are in math and not females. And so she says, once you get higher, when you're looking at schools, there's an unproportional amount of boys that take math and that are encouraged to take math. And for girls are almost discouraged. And she's found that in her research as well. There's a ton of information in there. So she feels that we actually need to shift our thinking on math, and that we're doing a disservice to our kids and to our society, and thinking that math is this like you're a math expert or you're not, because she says actually everyone can do math at a high level. So, it's a broader conversation as well, but that's what I definitely recommend.
Okay.
I agree. I agree. Actually, I was one of 3 females in my 50-person class physics class in university, by the way. So that is true. And it was definitely an intimidating atmosphere for women, but that's sidetracked. I think when kids say they hate something, when my son said he hated reading, it was one of 2 reasons usually. One, they don't see the value of it. They don't think it's going to be useful to them. Reading, for example, I mean, how did he come to the conclusion that reading wasn't useful? I don't know, but he did. So the second part of that was that he felt like a failure in it, and that doesn't feel good. If you're failing at something, you know that you're failing at it, and you feel bad about it, and so your brain starts to resist it. So, and we all experience that. If you're failing at something, if you're bad at something, it feels bad. And so you start to say, I don't like this, because you don't like feeling like a failure. So if your child is saying, I hate math, they're probably really saying, I just like feeling like I'm failing all the time. And so now I've decided that math is the reason that made me feel that way, and I'm not going to do it anymore. So, and I would say just back off from that. Like, don't talk about math. Don't make it, because the truth is, like reading, math is something that we're going to do in our life anyway. We're going to have to. We have to figure out how to add and subtract, because you have to know that you're not getting ripped off at the grocery store. A lot of kids, like when you're getting change, a lot of kids become entrepreneurs when they're unschooling, and then you have to learn math. You don't call it math, but you just, it's going to happen anyway. You have to do math for lots of things. When you're playing a board game and counting points, when you're playing a video game and having to use a money system, you have to use math in life. You can't avoid it. So, but if you stop talking about it as a subject, maybe, like my son decided to learn to read when he found a book at a bookstore that he wanted to read, and he was like, you can learn things from books. Well, now I need to know how to read. And he learned to read by himself. From that moment on, he just was like, that's it, I'm learning to read now, because I didn't realize that that's what books were for. You could learn things from them. So I think they have to find, but as a human being, we have to find the use of it ourselves. Nobody can tell us it's relevant because of this, and if you really want them to be self-motivated inside, they have to find that reason themselves. And once they do, they will learn it, because they will have to.
And a good way to motivate them is give them an allowance. They will learn about decimals and fractions and all that stuff, multiplying. So I just want to add on that thing too, is to build your kids up and really focus on what they're good at. And then they'll feel that they won't be so bad at other things. My son they put him in a math 14 class, which is kind of work skills math. And I knew his abilities, and I said, no, he's going to go into the applied math class, because I think he can do that. And I went to bat for him. And then when he graduated and went back and wanted to do a bioscience career and needed pure math, he worked so hard. He knew what he wanted, and he had the motivation at that point. And that's when he didn't get A's, but he got enough to get into his program. So motivation, I think, Robin, you were saying that is absolutely the key. is when they're motivated, then they will just take control and just shine. So our next question is, when they're taking, say, Math 1510, where are they accessing the courses from? They can do it so many ways. They can take an online course. So all my kids, their first grade 8 course was online. And that was just to get them kind of used to an online program. Most parents can teach math content up to grade 8 and including grade 8. I'm quite sure we can without pulling too much from memory or having to brush up or read teachers' manuals. We can teach to grade 8. Or a lot of times what they did is they didn't want to do an online course. They wanted to do their own pace. So like I said, we bought the textbook, we bought the key, and they could work through it. They could take 2 years, 3 years to work through it. And that's what a lot of unschoolers do. Their goal is to write the grade 12 diploma examination because that's what gets them into post-secondary. And then they work back from that. Then they work in grade 10 math book, work in grade 11 math book, work with Khan Academy. And just then they go in, write the grade 12 diploma, which is only on the grade 12 course, but they have the prep work for that, and get their mark, get on their way. They can go into any math program at university they want. So a lot of kids do it that way without even getting a high school diploma. Okay, we have a few more questions here. Heather says, okay, we have, how can working parents balance time for unschooling? Anyone want to take that one on?
Well, I can, because I'm a single mom and I work full time. I work from home mostly, but well, especially this year. But I just, because unschooling is just really life learning. You just live your life and you look for opportunities to, I guess, not teaching opportunities, but just opportunities and interest, and then you facilitate their interests. So my son wants to learn scuba diving, then I find people he can talk to about it, and then he said, I need to learn this math, so I show him the resources, I find resources for him. And so it's not really just like when you move into unschooling, you're not sitting at a kitchen table doing worksheets unless that's what they want to do. So there is not really any time specific, like we don't have school time in this house anymore. We have moved away from that entirely. We have chore time. we have you need to go move your body times, but we don't have specific school time because I want him to move away from thinking of learning as school, because learning is life, not school. And if you want to learn something, you find the resources and you learn it. That's how we do it as adults. And that's how I want my son to start thinking about it, instead of thinking, oh, it's school time, I have to learn something now, and then develop a resistance towards learning. So that's kind of the answer. I work full time. I'm a single mom. I do all the chores on a hobby farm. I run my own household, I run my own household, of course, with no help. And that's how I do it. It's life. And I fit it in where I can, just like I fit in house cleaning where I can, and I fit in, all the other things that I need to do, making dinner and stuff like that. So that's the answer from my perspective.
And I can add something as well, because I'm also a working parent. One is I'm able to do a lot of work from home as well. So that obviously helps. And I think it is, like Golda said, shifting from the idea that learning only is going to happen when it looks like it's at school at a table within certain times, that learning is every day, no matter what you're doing. But if there is something that my kids really need me to help them with or support them with, just because as well for my schedule, because there are some times when my work takes me out of the home for like a very long day or something like that. We usually, and this just helps us for organization wise, we usually talk about, we actually have a calendar in our kitchen. And so for the month, I actually put in all the days that I have work. So they know ahead of time and they can look at the calendar and see the days either I'm not at home or, I have to be in a certain meeting. So that we can plan around those times. We also know, we usually talk about the week before what they have coming up, what they need. They're like, Mom, I really am going to need you to help me with this. And so I know when they need me to be available as well. And I make sure there's also times in the days where I'm not distracted by work, that I'm also present with them as well. And then also I get a lot of help from family. I know not everybody has family around. And I have lived in many places where we have no family whatsoever. And so, whether it's a good friend that's helped me out at times, or, my husband and I, where we've both had to work, and, my kids have gone over to other friends' house for the day. And we always try and reciprocate as well, or they spend a lot of time with their grandparents as well. So finding that help within community has also helped a great deal too. And that's all still part, like a day with grandparents is a huge learning day. That's a huge learning experience. Stories and, there's so many things that happen within that, or, the neighbors and what they do. And, so that also is part of that learning time too. And that's helped with our work.
Okay, we're down to our last 8 minutes. So I'm going to answer the next question. I'm curious whether some kids might either feel more intimidated or more confident in themselves with no prior math class experience until these courses in grade 8 or above. Very, very good question. So when my kids started in grade 8, like I said, they're not starting from grade 1 in math. They have a lot of the concepts already in their head because they've learned it experientially. What's new to them is doing it on paper. Now, I'm not going to say they didn't need a lot of support during that grade. So they needed support in helping them navigate the online class. And what they would do is they'd start learning these concepts like adding fractions on paper. So the teacher who was teaching the course assumed that a lot of the school kids had done this before, where my child was new to it. So depending on the child, and a lot of my kids, they're not exceptional at math, they're average kids. So they didn't get it right away. So I would support them by printing off extra worksheets outside the classroom, so outside the course. So I would print extra, sit with them, help them work it out. So I wasn't the teacher, but I was a big support parent during that year. And I had to figure that into my work schedule too, is, am I available to help you with grade 8 this year or not? So, and then grade 9 was great because they didn't do anything. And then grade 10 was like, I can't help you anymore. You have to go to your teacher because I don't know any of this stuff. So yes, that was my experience. Very quickly, Golda and Robin, do you want to add anything to that?
My kids have not attended a class, so I can't give experience from my kids. But I do know that from a lot of, I think it could go either way depending on the child and how you talk about it in the conversations that you have. So I think we can really, as parents, help set them up to feel a certain way if they're deciding to go into that class, and help them to feel confident. And also, there's a lot of kids who've always been going to school that I personally know that have no confidence whatsoever. And they still have to go into that class every day, no matter what, and struggle through. And they might not even ever get any of that extra support to help them. So I think, it doesn't matter where you're coming from. There's every side, but I definitely think that your kids, it's an opportunity for great conversations with your kids and to build a foundation of support. And again, we were talking about that emotionally engaging education. Building that foundation will help them in anything. So,
Golda?
I agree. I think actually the idea that when you enter a classroom that everybody is at the same skill level is a fallacy. I was a high school social studies teacher, and I had plenty of kids come through that class not able to read. So just because they've had 10 years of direct instruction doesn't mean they learned anything. A lot of kids have disengaged from school, and so in that math class, there will be all levels in grade 8. From like I was in a grade 8 classroom. I wasn't a grade 8 level kid. I was probably at a grade 5 level. So I think that's one of the myths about school is that there's a prior knowledge that happens in this school system before those years, and that's simply not true. So I mean, how do you build confidence in a person? They start to be successful, and hopefully they get a good teacher that can help build on success instead of focusing on weakness. So because that's what good teachers do.
Okay, last two questions are, what are your thoughts on John Mighton's work, Jump Math? Like I said, we never used curriculum before grade 8, so I have no idea. So no comment from me. And the other question is, how do you help kids who have been in school for years become self-motivating unschoolers? All I could say to that one is, everyone is self-motivating. We all live, we all breathe, we all want things from life, we all want to do stuff. So I would empower your children to do what they want to do within everyone's respect and safety and those kinds of parameters. But become a yes person. If they want to take apart a toaster, or if they want to see how it works, if they want to make something, if they want to get in the kitchen and cook dinner, become the yes parent and empower them to learn through experiential learning. Golda and Robin, any last thoughts on Jump Math or motivating unschoolers?
Jump Math is a very good program if you wanted to keep up with the school system. It's not really an unschooling thing though, because they're going to learn a little bit of a lot of things and maybe not develop a mastery in anything. So, I mean, that's the school system in general in math though. So, I mean, it's a very good program. If you wanted to do a more traditional math program, that's my thoughts on the math. I used Jump Math myself when we were still doing traditional homeschooling. And it was because it was the most aligned with the provincial curriculum. And I was about the 4 years become self-motivating. I think most of the time when people ask me that, and including myself, when I thought he wasn't being self-motivated, it was because I was not assigning value to what he was motivated to do. And so once I let go of the idea that what I wanted him to do was the only valuable thing, I found that he is actually very self-motivated, but I think it takes time to get to that point. So give yourself time, give him or her or them time, because when you come out of the school system, you might have a resistance to the way things are done in school. So they call it deschooling, where there's a period of time where you don't do anything and don't talk about schooling and learning, and just have that time to kind of decompress from the system itself. And then of course and then start to let go of your idea of what's valuable, because what's valuable to one human being is not necessarily valuable to another, but there is a value in what they're doing. You just have to recognize it, I guess.
Okay,
So,
thanks.
Robin?
I don't know anything about Jump Math as well. I'm not familiar with that. My kids use Khan Academy because that's what they've chosen to do. So I've gone with their direction in that. Remember, unschooling, when the learner chooses what, when, how, and where they want to learn. So that's, I have no reference to Jump Math. As for building self-directed learners, I agree as well. I think the key is having the chance to be self-directed, to make your own choices and being supported in those choices. Like Golda said, validating that it's not about, oh, you can be self-directed as long as it's something that you're doing to please me, or that I'm happy with. If they choose something, you know that it's meaningful to them and validating that. So, and also is being offering an environment of secure attachment and support. What happens is when you are making your own decisions, when you have self-determination or being self-motivated, most likely you're going to try things and make mistakes. We stop being self-motivated when we are punished or are scared to make mistakes, when there is not a safe environment to try, to practice, and then make mistakes. So by having, that's why I feel the importance of that secure attachment base is really important in self-direction and being able to practice self-direction in your life. So creating the space to make that happen. And then with that comes competency, which then increases your self-direction or self-motivation. And then knowing that relational level, having those strong relationships, you'll know you'll always be supported no matter what. So it's just, again, the practice, trying and practice, and things aren't working, trying it again. So
I just want to add, in answer to the great debate, direct instruction or discovery, keep in mind, when you listen to the media, all the great debate right now going on out there, keep in mind that there are very, very, very little studies done on children who self-discover math in unschooling. Yes, kids may need direct instruction, but in a classroom environment, but nobody has studied those unschoolers like mine who don't go take math instruction for 8 years and still get an average mark of 81% in the diploma exam. We're not including in anyone's studies. So schools, most studies on education are done in school, which is an artificial environment. Okay, keep that in mind. They don't come to our houses and do studies on us. Okay, Golda and Robin, I just want to tell everyone the recording will be, well, Robin, you can tell them, but we will put it eventually on the Facebook group so you can access it. And Robin and Golda, where can people find you?
You could find me just if you search my podcast, Honey, I'm Homeschooling the Kids. You can listen to the podcast, find my website. Social media is great, Instagram and Facebook, Honey, I'm Homeschooling the Kids. My DMs are open, so if you want to get in touch with me as well there. My website, I can type that in after, imhomeschooling.com. And then I do have a Patreon. So actually these recordings go onto my Patreon page, patreon.com/Honey, I'm Homeschooling the Kids. And so my patrons have access to all of these recordings. So it will be on there immediately as soon as we get them downloaded. I post it on there, and I think I'll probably be adding a few little snippets here and there for other questions that sometimes come in later. But I'll type it in the chat, but that's how you can find me.
Hey, and Golda.
So you can find me on Instagram. My tag is @justgolda, and my other way to get in contact with me is through my my webpage, demystifyingeducation.com. And on that page, there's a resource page with a whole list of resources you can use if your kid is interested in something, and they, you know, things about literacy, math, science, social studies, or humanities, I think. So yeah, I can be found there. And if you're in Alberta and you're interested in talking to me, there's my phone number is easily available on the piece on the school website. I can but it's all, you can also get me by my email address on that Demystifying Education page.
Okay, thanks. And I have a blog at judyarnell.com on parenting and non-punitive parenting. So raising kids without any punishment. And I also have a blog called Unschooling to University. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, Amazon. So come find me. If you have any questions for any of us, hunt us down and ask us. We're passionate about unschooling and we would love to answer them. So yeah. And I have a 2-for-1 book sale on now. Hey, thanks everybody for coming. That was really great.
Yes, thank you for coming, everyone. That was awesome. I'm really glad of the positive comments that we saw in the chat box. We really appreciate those because it helps us know that we were providing value. So thank you for coming and staying today.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. And thank you for everyone also always being so engaging and asking great questions. I think any question that you ask is a wonderful question. And I know we could spend the whole day on some and dive deeper and deeper. I think that's why we decided to do this every month. So yeah, thank you for being present. We really appreciate it.
Thanks. Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Enjoy the day.
Have a great
Bye.
day.